Hello and welcome to another episode of the AI Relay. I am Andrew Signore.
And I'm Jonathan Spanos. Andy, when I first got into this, I thought it was going to be pretty difficult, and indeed it was. But the first thing that I thought I found was like prompting. Everybody was talking about, I got to be good at prompting. So I've worked hard for all these months to be really good at prompting. And let me read you something I just saw the other day. It said to me, why using AI well is not the same as being good at prompts. What have I been doing this whole time?
Well, well, listen, you haven't been wasting your time.
Oh, okay.
That's for sure. Okay. But I think that's a good point around like understanding the difference between like, you know, expressing yourself and communicating well with an AI versus knowing the capabilities of AI. Because I think understanding what the AI tools can do is probably even more important than expressing yourself clearly in the prompt. And I think that and there's a distinction there, right? That maybe in the beginning, when when AI was young, I would say that AI, like that prompting was the way that you communicated. It was the only way to provide context. Um, and then AI has
Hmm.
matured, right? So, while that's still important, understanding that AI is capable of so much more, you start to realize that th- the prompt is just a piece of the puzzle. And when you start understanding that AI is capable of, reasoning through multiple steps, you might change your strategy around how you prompt rather than giving it clear instructions to giving it clear objectives, if that
Interesting.
makes.
So yeah, I mean, my experience with prompting was, and I think what we were taught through, if you do like these online courses, let's say, or just watch online videos that are very helpful, it was almost like a magic spell of some kind, where it had like these very specific sections that you would set up, who the role is, what the constraints are, what your objectives are, maybe some examples of the kind of output you're looking for. But it was very like, follow this recipe and fill in your own content, and you're a good prompter. And now it's become almost rote. Like my fingers just create those indents now when I'm typing. But the you said like the AI is getting better. I think that you mean like the models are just getting so much more, let's say, intelligent, that they're able to parse out everything that I've been structuring out of maybe more of a bit of a natural like paragraph.
Well, for sure that the models, you don't need to be as explicit. The models too now have or these tools now have memories across your conversation. So it is not just getting context from this specific conversation, but it's also getting context from all your previous conversations where you might have, talked about like similar topics before. It understands where you're coming from, or that
Mm,
you have a certain job, and it will have
mm,
a certain memory now, where you don't need to provide that same level of context. Now, the other thing though is what I was saying about capabilities is not just about models getting smarter. It's about models being able to do more, right? And knowing what they're able to do more. That's good. That will lead to a different type of prompting. And like, I'll give you an example of, if you were someone that, let's say needed to do, let's say you're making a decision at work based on, like, let's say sales information, and you had your AI do some research on what was selling well in this area. Y- in the past, you might have just told the model to go and do that. It would then provide you with a research report, and then you would read it, and then you'd come
mm,
to some sort of conclusion, and then you'd put together like an inventory sheet, or an invoice, or like a sales sheet that you wanted to a purchase order, right?
hmm
So if you were to if you gave it the objective of, I want to create a purchase order, go and research what's selling well, here's some information about my store, and give it the objective of what you were looking to do. Like, because in the first example, you told it to go and do research, and then you were going to take that research and do something. But
mm,
knowing that the model is able to do like multi-step reasoning, and can create reports and slide decks and purchase orders and
Yes.
things like that.
Right.
You can give it that instruction with that outcome in mind, and it will go through all those steps, right? So rather than taking a piece, reading this thing, doing your own analysis, the agent can go and do all of those steps now and then provide you with your purchase order, which is the thing that you're looking to achieve. Like that's the real outcome that you're always looking to get. So that's why I'm saying, like, understanding what models are capable of doing is going to change the way that you prompt because you're going to be asking for different stuff.
I see. Right. So the prompting so far has been, I need this piece of information, this summarized thing, this spreadsheet or whatever. So I physically, the human, can go do something with it. And so the prompting was structured around like the only just the next step. I never really had to tell, or thought, I suppose, to tell the model or the agent like the overall concept of what it is that I'm doing. It was just like, I need a data analysis of some
Right.
kind. Give me a spreadsheet. I'm going to go do some stuff. I probably
Well,
then took that and fed it right back to the AI to do the next step as well. And
for
I just kind
sure.
of handheld it all the way through the process that I hadn't maybe decomposed already in my brain.
And you said it right there too. You said, like, I would tell it to create a spreadsheet. In the early days of AI, that's like 2023, 2024, right? Like not that long ago.
Yesterday.
It didn't have the ability to create spreadsheets. But it did have the
Mm,
ability to, like, create formulas for a spreadsheet. So maybe you like copy and pasted a bunch of data and cells and you like paste it
mm,
into ChatGPT and would give you like the formula that you would need to like copy and paste that out and put that into your
that's right.
spreadsheet. And like, so early days of using AI well was just doing that, like copying and pasting stuff out until the models advanced and the tools advanced to where it's like, okay, now it can actually interact with Excel. It can create Excel files. It can open them up. It can look at them. It can manipulate them and create new ones. Understanding that, well, now it's like, all right, now I'm going to give it instructions to act, not just give me the formula, give me the whole spreadsheet,
Right.
right? And then, and then it just keeps building from there. And it's like, all right, well, actually, I take this spreadsheet when I'm done with it, and I save it to this network share, right? I should just tell the model to, like, after you create the spreadsheet, I want you to save it to this network share so that my team can use it, right? So understanding what the model is capable of doing is just, it's going to change how you are interacting with AI because and again, like, these things change so often that it is likely that if you were even a great user of AI and a great prompter 6 months ago or 8 months ago, and you haven't changed the way that you're doing things, that you're probably not great at it anymore, right? There's so much has
Right.
changed in the 6 months that if you're still doing what you were doing 6 months ago, you're definitely not using the tools and the models to their capabilities,
To their
even
fullest
close to their
capabilities. Right.
capabilities. Uh,
Right. I think, I recall the prompt had to be, you didn't want to get overly detailed, but like you're saying, if you needed like a some kind of formula for an Excel, or if you vibe coding and you're just copy pasting these code blocks,
right,
it had to be very descriptive. I had to be like, let me think exactly how I want to phrase this, because it might get distracted if I'm a little too vague, if I use too many metaphors. It's not a human, it won't catch on. I might confuse it. So I had to be very like careful with my wording and almost get like something I would hand in for like a report in university. I had to be, this has got to be just right. But the models are getting so good now. Like, are we moving past really worrying about like these fancy magic words and going to a place where it's really just, what is the vision that I have? And I need to kind of express the whole picture and say, how do you want to do it?
right. And like, this is why things change so quickly, that things that you might have included in your prompt to provide context to the model, you might now include that as a skill, uh,
Hmm.
where the model is going to reference a little file that you've made maybe around branding or around your business, right? So that when you create that slide deck, it creates a slide deck, that looks like it was created by and for your company. And so before, you probably would have had to provide all that context to the model in its prompt. Now, some of that context is coming from a skill. Some of that context might come from an MCP. Some of that context might come from a large product requirement document that you've like copied and pasted right into your agent's chat. And that is
Right.
providing the instructions and the information and the context for the agent to do its thing. And that wasn't always the way you did it. Like 2 years ago, it was only the prompt. Now, if you have a well-formed PRD, your prompts can be very little. It could be just like, read this file and then go build it. And
Right. So
it
so
doesn't need to be any more explicit than that.
a PRD, a product
It's a
requirements
product
document.
requirements document.
So to put that into folks who don't use product requirements documents, which there are plenty of us out there, but that's basically a goal, right? It's a description of a very well described kind of end goal. It's what the
Yes.
product requires. This is a document that tells you what the product requires to pass the test and say it's finished.
Right.
That doesn't say how I want you to build this product. It just says, this is what the product is supposed to be. This is the goal that I
I
have.
mean, it
And it
even
looks
can.
like this.
Like, so, and a product requirement document is not something that like is even like, it's not new. It's what developers always used to kind of flesh out what it is that we're building. And it used to be that like you would spend a ridiculous amount of time with all the stakeholders building out this product requirements doc prior to ever like bringing in the developers and saying like, hey, this is what we want you to build. Right. You'd get all your stakeholders and you'd have meetings after meetings after meetings because, once the developers were the most expensive and it was like the longest, the tallest pole in the tent, so to speak. Right.
Mm.
It took the longest. It was the most expensive. It was a thing you had to make sure you got right. So, you used to spend a whole lot of time fleshing out your requirements before you kind of handed them off. But in the world of AI, like that's sort of flipped, and that's no longer like the longest. It's the thing that takes the longest. It's actually the thing that takes the shortest amount of time, and it's the thing that's the cheapest, right? Like creating the code is something that used to take weeks and months and have like highly skilled people doing it. Now you can do it in an hour, and you don't need to be, you really don't need to have any background in computer science or programming.
Because if you have a well stated goal, in this case, it's a product requirement document. But in a case of, we've brought up teachers in the past. I think they're just a really good use case for how this technology can be understood and grasped. But thinking of whatever it is that you want to get as a product, let's say, is like, what are the requirements for the thing that I want to have? Like when I finally have it, what are the check boxes in my mind that I need them all to be? So we're talking about like a clarity of goal here more than like a long conversation trying to figure out how to build this thing. it it's more like like a goal oriented thing now, and the models, to your point, I think about them getting so much better, right? Like now you can say, this is my goal. Like here's a picture of the thing, right? Like build it. Where before I had to like make this very complicated prompt to take it step by step through these thought processes of how it was going to understand what I was trying to ask it, and then
right,
finally get on to building with it. And now it's almost like, you see this? Build it.
right.
Eh,
Well, and then if you take it a step like the next layer of abstraction, right, is the conversation that you have with your AI to build that product requirement document, right? And the clarity of your thought and being able to kind of flesh out the idea. And also understanding like, the quality of your prompt is also, it'll be based on your understanding of the model's capabilities. So, one of the things that I always include when I'm building out a PRD or a product requirement doc with the AI is I want the AI to ask me questions, right? Because in my mind,
hmm.
I'm I'm pretty clear in what I want, but I don't know that the AI is clear that it knows what I want. So I always wanted to ask me as many questions as it needs to for it to have a complete idea to be able to build out this product requirements document for the express purpose of like delivering it to a coding agent to build it, right? So like that's essentially my instruction, is that like I've got this idea, I'll give it as many details as I can think of that would be like pertinent, but I want the AI to ask me questions because there's likely things I haven't thought about, whether that's specific frameworks I want to use, or that, or who if I'm building an application, like, is this for your company? Is this for like, your commercial users? Like, what is it just for you? Um, all these things are gonna, kind of lend to the design decisions that the AI would make when
That the
building
AI
something.
would make. And I
Right.
think
I'm
that's
not
kind of
making
where we're
any.
going here, right?
Yeah, right. It's like I'm
Right.
just providing, details and making it clear what I want my objectives to be. I'm not
Right.
saying like I want you to write this in Python. It probably like
Right.
it might
It
choose
probably will.
Python to write it, but maybe
Yeah.
not. But at the end of the day, like that's really not, as important to me as when you're finished, like this is what I want. I want this dashboard. I want this app. I want an iPhone app that does
Mm.
this. That's the outcome, and the details and how I want it to work. You might have, in your head. Prompting at this point has become, is a conversation and understanding too that in the case of something like building an application, the AI knows way more than me, right? So I can't. I'm not going to be able. That's not the sort of context that I can provide it to make it successful. Like I know it knows how to code. What will make it successful is me, giving it all the details of how I expect it to work and operate. If it's just for, like if it needs to scale to 1 million users, right? I should tell it that. Those are
Hmm.
important details.
Hmm.
And this is why too, like, if you're not someone who builds app on a regular basis, like let the AI know that you're not a developer, you don't build on a regular basis. Like this isn't your strong suit, and that like you need to think about all the things that a non-developer wouldn't think about. Ask me questions.
Right. So like even in a conversational scenario there, like you would still be kind of throwing out all the different elements of a solid prompt for, the classical
Right.
good prompt, but
But
it comes
without
out in a
knowing,
more natural conversation now because you just
right,
told it. You essentially told it that it has a role. It now is the product developer. It knows how to do that just by telling it that you're not. It kind of will get like, oh, I am the expert. And so that's like the role. You're the expert developer
right.
here.
And I think
And
we
the
covered that
constraints are like the descriptions.
like in an earlier podcast where like, basic prompting of like, setting that role of like, here's who I need you to be. Like I need you to be like
Right.
an expert iOS developer, right? And
And that principle and those kind of basic prompt principles, I think, still are quite successful techniques. So, like, this isn't to say that don't define the role anymore. If you do, it just
no, it's
buttresses the system even more.
but it's more around like your understanding of what the model's capabilities are going to, are going to shape the way that you prompt it, right? And that the more you understand what the model can do, will change the way that you interact with it, right? Because you will start providing you giving it objectives rather than instructions.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of mental model maneuver there. Just a couple months ago, prompting was like really good instructions, and
Right.
now it's like a really good meeting. Like I just had a really great meeting with my team, and
Right.
like they're
Right
on the
now they
same page
know
now.
they didn't know before, and like they asked me a bunch of questions. I gave them all the answers they need, and now they're able to go and build
Right.
the thing.
Right. So like we we can now focus more on just getting the concept out of our head, verbalized, rather than going through the rigmarole of like, how do I instruct this thing to make all the little pieces of this concept that I have in my head? Because if I tell like just 6 months ago, if you gave it a massive prompt that like included everything, you'd end up with crazy drift by the end of it, and you'd be kind of wasting a lot of time just cleaning up a mess that you made. But now you can give a pretty extensive, long product requirements document, or if you have a some kind of lesson plan that you're building, that's like multi-step, or maybe
Right.
for the whole quarter or something. Like you
I
could be like,
mean,
I'm going to go through all these things, and it
the
can
amount of
start at the
information,
beginning and start chunking through.
yeah. Well, the amount of information now that you can fit too within the context window is like massive compared to like what we started with.
Hmm.
Like a 10x. Meaning that that you could potentially put you know the entirety of like all of the Harry Potter books in a single prompt
Hmm.
and send that to a model, and it will be able to read it, analyze it all within a single context window. Like that's how
Right,
much text can
and
fit in that,
it'll be accurate. Like you could
and
say
it'll be
afterward,
accurate.
what was
Right,
the seventh word on the 15th line of chapter 3 on the third book, and it'll be like,
right,
there it is.
right.
Where before it probably would have just made something up,
Well, you wouldn't
thinking
have been able, like the context window
it
wouldn't
wouldn't have
have
even
been able
fit.
to get all of the books in
Right,
the window of memory.
right.
So so again, like how you prompted the we're I was talking about this the other day with a friend about RAG, which is like the retrieve retrieval augmented generation, I think is
I
the
think that's right. I always
context.
get hung up on the G too.
uh and and this is where you give a model, like you augment your model with a bunch of your files and knowledge, stuff that it wasn't trained on, it wouldn't have any knowledge of. You can kind of bolt on these sort of stores of knowledge
Which
for
become
your
like
agent or model.
the real-time reference documents. You say, "We're working
Right,
on this project. You're a super smart person," or whatever, but this is the project we're working on, and these are the specific resources that I need you to be referring to for this thing. And then you kind of bolt that on to the outside
right.
of the mind.
And when like and definitely when context windows were smaller,
Hmm,
you had to sort of prepare this data set in a way, or store it in a way that made it real easy for a model to read it. Right, it's called like text embedding and creating a vector database, but it's really just turning all those like letters into numbers that the model can scan through like super fast. And that was the way that you augmented knowledge to your model, and it was efficient, right? And even that is changing now with the model's capabilities, where people are using just like text files with an index, and like just this in like a text index
mhm.
file that keeps track of all these other text files. And rather than having this like a complicated like vector database, it's now being achieved like in a much simpler way with text files.
With just
And this
words.
is it's just words, right? And now you don't need to necessarily translate everything from a word to a number and put it in this like fancy database. Now you can
Right.
just have like a folder filled with files, and there's an index behind the scene that's just linking all
Mhm.
those files together. And
Yeah,
these are again.
if I'm in a law firm and we're working on a specific case, the case isn't on the internet, the case isn't in the trained model's data, but no longer do you need to take the case file and translate it into numbers or something. You could just literally say, here's the full case file. Boom. Like everything we're working on comes from and goes to this huge document, right? And it's just words. Like you can sit physically and read the case file yourself. The model will do just the same thing.
You can
And
even, right, I mean,
you're saying it'll fit now, like it can handle that. So we're
so much more,
changing.
right? That you could fit a massive amount within a single prompt and within a single query. Here's all of this stuff. Now that you have context windows of a million tokens rather than like 100,000 like a year ago. So like now the window's 10 times larger. That's like what you're capable of doing with a model. Again, it changes, and how you interact
Right.
with the model changes when all of a sudden you go from memory being this big to memory being 10 times the size.
And that memory kind of it's adjusting the prompting, I guess, in so many ways. Like so many things that I'm reflecting on how I've been doing it and how I could be doing it. And that what you're saying with the length of the context windows now, uh, like the structured prompting, I felt like I had to take my mind and the way I think and squish it into this structure. Like there might be a little bit of my own voice and some of the content in it, but it wasn't me just talking and being me and
Right.
expressing my own way of thinking. But now it can fit, so I can kind of relax on the structure perhaps a little bit now and just talk and be more fluid and try to have clear visions of what it is that I'm trying to say and then say it clearly, but in my own way. I don't have to learn a new computer language or a prompt technique specifically. And I think that opens up a lot too, because now you can relax and just type and not worry too much that you're kind of running on. You don't want to be like crazy vague. I don't mean to say that, but
Even if
we
you
can
are
focus
vague,
more
you can,
on
you can just make sure that there's enough follow-up questions that by the end of the conversation, it's no longer vague. Uh,
right.
but
It's no longer vague, and
you mentioned
it will
structure.
reflect. Oh, go ahead.
You mentioned structure, and I think like one thing, like just to be clear, that the more structured your prompt, likely the better the model is going to do with it. Like models like structure, right?
Hmm.
And even like there have been like research. There's been research done around like people converting their natural language prompts into a structured prompt, like using JSON, which is like this, just a way to structure text data. And
Not a
the
like
models
a
do.
paragraph would also be a way to structure
Yeah,
data.
it's almost like if you were to look at if you were to take natural language, or if you've ever seen like a Word document where you actually see the formatting on the page, sort of like that, right? Like you're seeing the structure behind the
Mm,
scenes of of a document.
right.
It's a structured text document, and that's essentially what JSON is. And Models do great with structure and structured JSON. Uh, does that mean that everybody should like convert all their prompts to JSON before sending it to the model? It's like no, because
You
the
don't even
models
know
are
what that
like
is, huh?
plenty good enough to not have to convert all your stuff to JSON. Will it do better? Like it might do better. It might do better like with memory management. It might do better like remembering certain key things. It might, right? But is it natural to be, you know, that's like to me that's a step back. If I need to like take
It is,
everything
yeah.
I want to say
That's a
and then
barrier.
right. So
That's a
if
barrier, right?
I can achieve what I need to achieve using natural language and just having a natural conversation and fleshing out, an app or like a workflow that I want to achieve, uh, to me that's way better than trying to get it all right and converting
Mm.
my prompt into JSON and then sending a JSON prompt to the model just because there's a benchmark somewhere that says like, yeah, it does it like a little bit better with JSON.
A little bit better, yeah. Yeah, and like even leaving the JSON part out, the just there's still structure in how you would speak to anyone. Like you wouldn't really start a conversation like at the end, then jump to the beginning of the middle, go to the end of the middle, and then go to the front. That just would confuse even me, right? So it's
Right.
the same sort of thing. If you just talk to it, but talk to it like a rational person. Start with an introduction, explain it, what you're trying to do, what you want, and then explain what it looks like, and then close it out. So, to wrap up, like this is the tool I want, or this is the project I need, or this is the paper I'm writing. Um, and then to your point, you could say like, please ask me anything for clarifications. And I often say at the end, I ask it like, what do you think? Because it
Right.
causes it to say like, well, he's asking what I think.
I'll ask for suggestions. I'll be like,
Right.
hey, if you can think of something that like will enhance this tool, suggest it. I'm
Right.
like,
You could
and
also,
it
I mean,
often
often,
does. And like, what's interesting too, like when you ask it to ask you questions, it will ask you maybe 6 questions, and then it'll like chew on it. It'll think,
mhm,
and then it might follow up with like 4 more questions, and
mhm,
then it'll chew on it a little bit more and think, and then it'll be like, and then you can like open it up and read through the reasoning, um, and then I'll be like, okay, I think I got everything, but I got two more questions.
Mhm.
Like it will continue until it is certain it understands what it needs to build.
Your
And
vision.
my experience is that like that's what it like that'll do it, right? If you flesh out the idea, have it ask you questions with the goal of a product requirement document that you could feed to your coding agent or whatever agent you're working with, right? Um,
And
that's
well, to be honest, even if you're not going for a product requirement document, if you just
right,
have
or
a
just
good
any outcome.
vision of what your outcome is, it's not to say that we should be overly specific. It's kind of almost the opposite, not to be too broad, but don't get hung up on things. Just be really good at describing what you see in your mind and don't worry about how it's going to happen. The model will take care of it. The more I want to say the word detail, but I don't mean granular detail. I just mean the more you really take it through all of the little pixels of whatever the vision is that you have, the
Yeah,
better it's going to be able to catch on to your concept overall, obviously. And so like it used to feel like I had to get super prompt wizard level, like I am awesome at prompting and
yeah.
no one can prompt better than me kind of thing. Uh, but I
There was a
think
time when
what
people
you're
thought it was a job, right? Like
I
prompt
think there was a
engineering.
time where it
Remember
was.
that?
It was a job for like 3 weeks, I think.
Right? Yeah, for a hot minute. Prompt. Everybody's
Right,
like, "Oh, prompt engineering. That's going to be the gig."
right.
Until it wasn't. And then people realize
Mhm,
like, well, anybody that's going to be using this thing is going to need to be good at prompting. Like, that's not going to be like a job for somebody that
right.
it's the same thing too with like prompt repositories. So
Yeah.
useless, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It- you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
uh,
There's
reusing
like a
somebody's prompt.
to
You should
read
just
through it to make your own custom by the time you read it, you would have written your own, you know?
right at this point.
Um,
You can literally say to the model like, "Write me a prompt. Write me the best prompt in the world for this thing."
there's no
Uh,
better prompter than the LLM itself, you
right,
know? And to loop it all back is if you've given it a really clear vision, it'll prompt itself or any other model way better than you can because now that's a kind of its skill set has evolved to that where we can give up even more to the model and kind of trust the model but correct the drift and just be clear-minded about what we're looking for now. It's like we've been freed up is I think a more
yeah.
positive way to look at it to stay up here and really be the visionaries and be articulate in our visions and not need to worry about like that. Am I putting together this book of spells that is going to make this magical box produce these magical outcomes? You just need to get better at defining the job you're giving the AI. Like and then let the AI do the job, right? Is that what we're saying? Like just a couple of months ago, I had to do a job of figuring out what I needed to tell it to do a job.
Right.
Now I just have to tell it the thing I want and be like, I don't know, you do it. And
The
like,
objective, right? Like, this is the outcome that I want, and not not help me with this step, and then help me with the next step, and then help me with the third step, and then
right,
you know, right,
right. Let it tell you what the next steps are going to be. It ask you the questions so that it can decide how to turn this whole idea into the bits and pieces and the step by steps that it's going to go through to actually get from phase one to phase finished. So maybe we can kind of sum it up a little bit there. But the lesson here, I think, isn't that prompting is dead. It just kind of like got absorbed into the substrate of the model. It's still looking for the kind of structured elements that were obviously indented and titled and headed and footnoted and things and bullet pointed. But if it's all in there in a well conceived vision, the model will find what's my role, what's the objective, what are the constraints. But it's just kind of going through paragraphs instead of these weird lists.
and it's not magic, but good prompting will like garbage in, garbage out. So good
Right.
prompting will certainly help. Get you the output that you're looking for. But I think that it's certainly not limited to that. And as the models evolve, it's becoming less and less important because it's just becoming one of the many ways you're providing context to the model. Like I said, whether it's through having it ask you questions or, providing it a document or having it go out and do research, there are so many ways to provide context to the model. Like you might not know the best way to do something, but you want it done the best way. And you can tell the model, like,
Right.
go out and find the best way people are doing this thing. And then I want you to do that.
Right.
Um, you know,
And
so
and you want to do the outcome of the that is, are we having good clear visions of what we need? And you kind of touched a little bit before, like if you don't have a good clear vision, take another session to do a kind of design conversation with it and be born back and forth. And then you go into a second session, clean context window, and you say, okay, I can articulate my overall vision and I can kind of be the manager above and just make sure that the outputs look like them, that the buttons that I want push or whatever it is.
yeah,
So interesting. We've moved so quickly from like what was the most essential skill for the future to, it's good to know. It is good to know, but like it's better if you just speak well and think clearly.
agreed. Just like communicating with a person.
Wouldn't you know? Humans have to know how to communicate.
All right. So I think we could probably wrap it up there. But
Yeah,
I think,
let's
yeah,
wrap it
this
up.
was an interesting, timely topic. And I think, again, like we could probably have a very different conversation about this same topic in a year,
It'll be
maybe
funny
less than
in just a
that. Yeah.
few months to review and hey, you remember episode 6?
Right.
Let's talk about
We're
it
still
again because
talking
it's totally
PRDs,
different.
right?
Yeah, right. Right. So let's just say thank you to everybody out there. We've seen some people making it all the way to the end of our longer videos. This one we tried to trim down a little bit. YouTube right now is our only platform. So please, what do we say? Like, subscribe,
Like and
share.
subscribe. Yeah.
Apparently sharing is really important for the
And
algorithm. It
like,
helps us out.
like special prize, which I haven't decided what it is, but like for the first commenter on the chat, we've yet to have a comment on the channel. You could be first, and some special award to
Yeah,
first commenter on
we'll think
the
of
AI
some kind of
relay.
decoder ring. We'll get
All
you a
right.
decoder ring to figure
All
this
right.
all out.
Until next time,
Have a good one, everybody.
take it easy.